Good morning on this New Year's Eve, and welcome to the Mass Memorial Final Virtual Presentation for 2023. The theme for the quarter, Faith that Pleases God, Unit 1, Profiles in Faith, Sunday, December 31st, 2023. Lesson title, Taking Risks and Reaping Rewards, Matthew 2, 1 through 12, King James Version. Our key verse, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Matthew 2, 2, King James Version. The aim for this lesson is to evaluate the implications of the wise men enduring afar to seek the King of the Jews, and to marvel at those who dare to move beyond boundaries and find Christ. And we should be able to name one area in which our congregation could reach beyond its comfort zone in following Christ and touch others with his love. Our lesson background, we've had Book of Matthew before, so I'm going to be very short on some of this presentation. Matthew, the writer of the Gospel of Matthew, his initial occupation was a tax collector before becoming a devoted follower of Christ. And his writings in Matthew's appear to be very concise and orderly, which lends itself to being a tax collector because, tax collectors have to be very articulate in their writing and speech and their calculations. But the Gospel of Matthew, this was written by Apostle Matthew to the new Jewish converts. Most of these Gospels was written to the church or to the newly converted Jews. His goal in this book of Matthew was to convince the Jews that Jesus was the long-awaited Savior and David's heir. This gospel is believed to have been written around 55 to 65 AD. And this is one of the only gospel that makes reference to the wise men in the story of Jesus and his birth. So we'll see that as we move forward. Other important names in this lesson are wise men or magi. They were believed to be astrologers or priests, people that were well versed in trying to foretell the future. And we know that they traveled from the east, which is now believed to be modern day Iran. And they were seeking to worship the king. And they obviously had to know something about this Jewish history because they followed the star and they were led by the star to where the child was. And they presented him with gifts. The other important person is Herod, who was king of Judea when Jesus was born. And we know he pretended he wanted to worship him when he actually wanted to kill him. And Herod was thinking only of himself because he didn't, when you say king of the Jews, he was already king. So he didn't want another person to challenge his kingship or his authority. So we know that Herod reigned between 37 and 4 BC. Remember, the years go backwards in BC. So as we look at Herod has a terrible history because he didn't find Jesus. So he ordered all the children 2 years old, around 2 years of age, to be killed. And this was known as the Massacre of the Innocents. So with just that little touch of history in our background, we'll move on to our scriptures. Seeking the King, Matthew 2, 1 through 8. I will do verses 1 through 3. Matthew 2, 1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. Matthew 2, 2. Saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Matthew 2, 3. When Herod the king heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, as I said before, the book of Matthew is the only book that mentions the wise men or the magi. And they were believed to be magicians or astrologers or people who attempted to foretell the future. But they are, like I said, they obviously knew something of Jewish history because they knew that this was around the time that Jesus was expected. So they followed the star and came to Bethlehem where he was born. And remember, this territory was under the Roman Empire, and Herod was the appointed overseer of this province of Judea. And so the wise men, like as I mentioned, had come hundreds of miles. It's believed to be 800 to 900 miles that they had traveled, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so what happened is that they had a long way to go, and so what they did, they followed the star, which led them to a place where they could come to worship Christ. And we don't know how long it took them to find Jesus. And they followed the star that led them where Jesus was found, but the star was not present all the time. When the time that they confronted Herod, it was believed that the star was not visible. And then after they left Herod, then the star reappeared. And so as they came in, and Herod realized these men had come from a long distance, and he figured, well, this must be important if they traveled this far. So he wanted to know where it was. And when he heard them talking about this adventure or travel, he got concerned. And I wanted to mention here, the religious leaders also got concerned, but we'll talk about their response to this new king that was being born. Let's move on to, this is called Seeking the King, Matthew 2-6, Matthew 2:4. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be. Matthew 2:5. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophets. Matthew 2:6. And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the princesses of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. This basically comes as a prophecy from the Old Testament. Remember, Micah, the prophet Micah, foretold that there would be a governor, a king coming out of the province of Bethlehem to rule over the Jews. So what Herod did, he gathered all the important people in his province, the priests, the scribes, everybody. And he wanted to know, where's this person? And they didn't know. And so he told them, find out where he is so I can go and worship him. Now, here you have priests. Now, when the wise men came, you would think that the priests and the religious leaders would have joined them in looking for the Christ child, but they didn't do that. They stayed in their comfort zone, in the temples, going by Herod's orders, did not seek out the prophet at the time. They knew what the scripture had said concerning the birth of Jesus. And remember, Micah, I think Micah 5:2, or the 5th chapter of Micah, which was written probably 700 years before the birth of Christ. He was prophesying that Christ would come. And actually, if you look up throughout the Old Testament, Christ's future is foretold throughout the Old Testament in various forms. And so these prophets knew, the priests knew what had been prophesied by the many prophets, but they didn't want to get out of their comfort zone. And then it says that he was to be born in the land of Judah, and there shall be a governor that shall rule my people Israel. And here again, the religious leaders took no action themselves. Now, you would have thought, if this was King of the Jews and he was coming for them, that they would have left their comfort zone to do like the wise men did and follow Christ, but they didn't. And if you remember our many, many lessons, it was the religious leaders that actually got Christ crucified. They chose Barabbas over Christ. So these religious leaders, most of them were Pharisees or Sadducees, they had a lot of pride, and they thought they knew best. And so here again, they're just waiting for the wise men to come back with word of where Christ is at this particular time. And moving on, continue with seeking the king. Matthew 2, 7 and 8. Then Herod, when he had rapidly called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. Matthew 2, 8. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. So he had met with the wise men on a private basis, and was excited. You know, he put up the front. He was excited. He wanted to know what time the star appeared and where was it going or where did it come from. So he truly portrayed another side of himself. He had them convinced that he just wanted to see this newborn child. And he told the wise men, when you find out where he is, come back and tell me so that I can come and worship. And we know this was not the case. He was very jealous. He was very threatened by somebody new. And oftentimes we see this in life. We're often threatened by people that come along that we don't know. And so he was threatened, even though this was a young child. He was threatened because he was called King of the Jews. And when a person is king, back in the day, they had all power. They could do anything they wanted to do. And so he just did not want to have his position challenged. And so he told them, oh, yeah, I want to worship. I want to worship this new child. So just let me know where he is. And so that takes us to our next scriptures, called worshiping the king. And that's Matthew 2, 9 through 12. I'll read 9 and 10. When they had heard the king, they departed. And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. Matthew 2 and 10. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. These are two very important verses, because here again it lets us know that after they got through talking with Herod, the star reappeared, and they followed the star until they found the child. We don't know how long this journey took. It probably could have taken as long as 3 or 4 years because of the method of travel. Now, if by plane, it probably take an hour, but because they traveled over 800 or 900 miles, and this was often not very nice territory to which they had to deal with. But they were determined to find this newborn king, and they were determined to see what the scripture had prophesied about. And so they finally reached their destination, and the star stood over where the child was located. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced, and they were excited. And they actually had felt that the prophecy had been fulfilled. When the star stopped and they came to where the child was. And remember, it at this particular time, as we'll find out later in our scriptures, it mentions in our next scriptures in worshiping the king, Matthew 2, 11 and 12. It says, and when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures. They presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Matthew 2:12. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. These are two important scriptures, because it says that they finally reached Mary, but it appears that they are in a house. So Jesus could have been 2, 3, 4 years old by the time they found him. And they knew who he was because the star had pinpointed the location, and they went in and they worshiped him. And when you think about him being called King of the Jews, um, they brought gifts. Now, it mentioned 3 gifts, but this does not necessarily mean there were only 3 wise men. This could have been an entourage of wise men. Maybe there were 3 that were in charge, or 3 that was the leaders. But when they found him, they presented him with frankincense and myrrh and gold. Frankincense and myrrh are sort of perfume-based things, and oftentimes myrrh was used in them to preserve bodies, to keep it from smelling. And we know that gold was the ultimate gift that you could give back in the old days. Even now, gold at a 22 karat or 18 karat or 24 karat is the ultimate gift that you can give someone. And so this frankincense and myrrh, these 2 gifts were actually came from the sap of special trees. And so they felt elated to present these gifts to this newborn king. We got to remember that at this time, Herod didn't know where he was. And if you look in verse 12, when they got ready to leave, they were warned in a dream not to return to their country by going back through Herod. Because at the time, Herod probably would have killed them after they told them where the child was born. But God protected these wise men and told them, find another route, go a different way. And if you continue to read the story of this birth, after this birth, Herod got really upset, and he was trying to hold on to power by eliminating anybody that was a threat to them. You know, sometimes we eliminate people through gossip, we eliminate people through lies, we eliminate anybody that's a threat to us. If we don't know anything, we can create something that will damage their reputation or that may not be true. But Herod wanted to eliminate this. He wanted to physically eliminate this person. And we know throughout the Old Testament, that was kind of standard procedure. If you were a king, if you were not what the people wanted, or you were not what somebody in that lineage wanted, you were often killed or assassinated. That just came with the territory of being king. So Herod took a terrible route here. And so what he did, he ordered all the children 2 years old or maybe better to be killed. It takes, I don't know what it takes to give an order like that, but people didn't have any choice. Many people had left. They hid their children, trying to save their children's lives. And this, in the Jewish history, it's called the massacre of the innocents, because a 2-year-old child can't do anything. A 3-year-old child can't do anything. They can't rule. I think the youngest ruler, if I recall, in the Old Testament, was 8 years old that became king. But here we're talking a 2, maybe 3, 4-year-old at the most. But we have to remember that in this story, God is the protector of this Christ child, and He want this lesson is about getting out of our comfort zone to worship Christ. So we've got now, we know COVID did a job on us, and we don't want to go to church, so we can sit at home and listen to the Sunday school lesson or listen to the pastor's message. And that's not getting out of our comfort zone, because it takes a little bit to get up and get some clothes on and go to church in this day and age. But just think what they had to do back then. They traveled 800 miles to find Christ, and took all kinds of risk. You know, if somebody told us that Christ was being born on this day, what would we do? Would we do like the religious leaders? We wait and see what somebody else go and see. We go, I'll let them go see first. It's like a newborn baby. Sometimes we'll say, I'll let other people go see the baby, and then I'll go see the baby later. So that's kind of what the religious leaders had done. The Jewish religious leaders really fought against this prophecy. And the reason I said that they fought against it is that they never accepted Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Even today, they oftentimes don't. They look at him as a carpenter's son or a prophet, but not as the Son of God. So in our Christian belief, that's one of the requirements, that we must believe that he was born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was resurrected on the third day. That's part of our Christian doctrine and our Christian belief. So this worshiping of the King was an important aspect of this lesson. And it's an important aspect because it let us know that people back then traveled 800 miles by donkey, boat, or whatever they had. They didn't have any cars and didn't have any planes. And so the least we could do is get in the car and drive 2-3 miles. But this is a good lesson going into the new year, because we should seek out to do something different, seek out to get out of our comfort zone. And on that note, we'll go to some practical applications. And like I said, it shows that what the wise men or the magi were willing to do to go seek out and worship the newborn King, and how they left their comfort zone. So again, I say we should be willing to get out of our comfort zone. And sometimes, even when we look back, many of us had to get out of our comfort zones to get jobs. I look at some of the kids now, they graduate from college, but they don't want to leave their surrounding. They want to stay within that arena. Sometimes you need to go 500 miles from home to get a good job. You can't always stay around home and get that job that God had for you. But you have to trust him. You have to have faith in what he has for you. And so this is something, as we go into the new year, let's do something different. Let's get out of ourselves, is what it is. And do what the wise men did. Travel, spread the word, talk about Jesus coming into the new year. And so this lesson also lets us know that faith and courage will be necessary to succeed, and that God will guide us. And we have to remember that no matter what we do, God is ever present with us, even though sometimes we act like he's far away. And in this lesson, the Magi wanted to see the fulfillment of the prophets. So they took a chance. They had the faith and the courage and felt that they would find this child. It might take them a while, but they felt that they would find this child. So when we venture out to do something, it's like trying to drive to New York City and you've never been there. And it's interesting, back in the day, they didn't have this automated directional system. You had to get a paper map and plot your way through, or else you were going to stray off the beaten path many times before you got to your destination. So these wise men had one guide, and that was a star. They didn't have no map. They didn't have GPS. And so it took them a while to achieve their goal, but they had to have courage to take this trip on. And even now, we have to have courage to do some of the things that we do. If you start working with the homeless or people that need a lot of help, sometimes it takes courage, because some of these positions are not easy to deal with people, oftentimes, that are sick, especially the mentally ill people. We have to have a lot of faith and courage to see that through. This lesson is also about what happens when we are not sincere in our motives. and want to use our knowledge in a way to seek power and stay in control. And this is portrayed very vividly in Herod's response on hearing of someone called King of the Jews. He immediately felt threatened and became so enraged he ordered again all the infants killed at around 2 years old. Power seems to be the word of the century, at least this new century. Everybody wants power. Everybody wants to stay in power, and they're willing to do anything to stay in power. It's amazing, even within the church, how people are threatened about their position. You know, a position is just a position, and people come and go in that position over time. When new people come in, sometimes we don't even want to train them in what to do because we feel like this is my job. I've had this job for 50 years. I'm not telling nobody else how to do it, when to do it, and what to do. So this was kind of Herod's attitude. It's amazing how little it takes for people to be threatened. You don't have to be a governor to make people feel threatened. Intimidation oftentimes is in the eye of the beholder. You know, if a person feels threatened, it's not always of that. It's not always what it is, and oftentimes we have gotten to the point that this is my job, this is my position. I'm not gonna let anybody take over my position. And sometimes you just need to give it up. When you stop doing the job of that position, it's time to give it up. And so Herod was that kind of person. And he was a great pretender too. He talked to the wise men and said, "Oh, I want to go worship and join you." And just like people now, they'll say, "Oh, you're doing a good job," and then get on the phone after they get to talking to you. "I can't stand her. She thinks she this and that." So Herod had the same attitude, but our lesson for this last lesson implies that we need to have more faith and courage, get out of our comfort zone to worship Christ and bring this message to others. So this is our last virtual lesson and the last Sunday of 2023. And so I hope that these scriptures have been helpful to you and you've grown as a result of these scriptures. These Bible stories come over and over and over, but they have different messages and different meanings. And it's amazing how often these scriptures repeat themselves, but in a different context. So as we approach 2024, I hope that everyone will be safe and continue to be a part of our virtual presentation. And on that note, I'll wish all of you a happy new year and thank you for being with us throughout 2023.